On this week's show, we speak to 3downnation.com's JC Abbott about the CFL Canadian draft, and the league has another game-changing announcement that will shake us to the core. All that and more coming right up. Welcome to the Alouettes Flightdeck, the premier Montreal Alouettes web media show presented by Royal Retros, where you don't need a time machine in order to get some sweet, sweet throwback merch. Head over to royalretros.com and use the code FlightDeck at checkout, and you will save 10% off your entire order. I'm Tim Capper. You can find me on X or Blue Sky at Repact. That's REPPACT.
And I'm Cliffy D. You can also find me on X and on Blue Sky at Cliffy D.
It's been one hell of a week for many reasons. Yeah, for many reasons. But we obviously feel that the thing that really needs to talk the most is not what you're thinking. It's actually the CFL draft, right, Cliff?
The CFL Canadian draft, actually.
Yes, sir. Yes.
And you're right. Yes, it is. Despite the news that has been dropped upon us here in the CFL universe, we're going to focus right now on what I feel, I think Tim feels, and what really everybody should be feeling is the most important part, and that is the CFL Canadian draft. It went down this past Tuesday, and we got some thoughts.
We do. What better way? We're bringing in a gentleman who is so knowledgeable about everything when it comes to the CFL draft. You may have caught him on his live stream during the broadcast, during the actual draft itself. Even when, the web counter, or sorry, the draft counter went down again, but yet it didn't rattle him. Did not rattle him one bit. So without further ado, let's speak with 3downnation.com's JC Abbott.
The CFL Canadian draft has come and gone. The Montreal Alouettes added 8 new players to their roster. And to give us a bit of a better perspective of who these players particularly are, we are thrilled, as always, to be joined by 3downnation.com's very own draft guru, JC Abbott. JC, again, welcome back to the Alouettes Flight Deck. We're glad to always have you here.
It's a pleasure. I love coming on the show every year around draft time and breaking it down. It's the one time of year I'm in demand, gentlemen. So I'm soaking up the spotlight just for a few days.
That's it. You got to strike while the iron's hot, right?
Exactly. Have my 15 minutes.
There you go. Well, the Alouettes made some draft choices yesterday, and if I could be completely honest, that draft tracker on the CFL website was absolutely terrible. I can't believe it crashed again. Wow. I mean, last year
we're still in the 5th round.
I know. It's nice of you to take time away from your live stream with Ben Grant to come and join us.
Yeah, Toronto still hasn't tweeted their 5th round pick. So
I was about to say that if that's the case, and I think the Ben Cahoon retirement ceremony is still going on too.
It never ends. It never ends.
Oh, boy.
But my goodness, I mean, last night was interesting for so many reasons. Not draft trackers notwithstanding, but the Montreal Alouettes made quite a few selections, and I'll be honest with you, JC. I'm struggling to really see who a lot of these guys are. Like, I mean, I get why some of these picks were made, and I get filling needs and things of that nature. But I look at some of these guys, I'm like, okay, you had, there are certain players that were made available or that were available still in later rounds, and yet the Alouettes zigged instead of zagged. And I'd love to get your thoughts on what you saw based on this draft from last night.
Unfortunately, the Alouettes had maybe my least favorite draft overall. Now, I think they were a lot more focused and less chaotic than some of the other teams. I don't think they made as many egregious reaches as somebody like Toronto, for example, that sort of went off the wall in the 2nd round, but then came back around with some value adds and later picks of guys who slid. But when I look at their class as a whole, it's a lot of players who are going to be real depth pieces. I don't know that I project a lot of starters from this group, whereas I think some other teams added some players that are going to contribute, maybe not immediately, but in the near future as real impact guys. I don't know that I see that with this Alouettes class. Now, every team needs depth special teamers. Don't get me wrong, and that's the bread, the butter, the whole purpose of the CFL draft in a lot of ways is to flesh out your roster and get those core pieces. And they've added a bunch of solid teamers and guys of that nature. But I don't know that they maximized what they could have in one of the deepest drafts we've ever seen in terms of talent. There was some meat left on the bone there, and I don't know how many of these guys will be on a roster in 3-4 years or even 2-3 years. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they exceed my expectations, but beyond their first round pick, which we'll talk about, which is a future and arguably my favorite player in the entire draft, just on raw potential, you get past that, and I'm underwhelmed, to say the least, with the haul that the Alouettes came back with.
Now, again, I don't want to disparage the work of a man whose football organization went to 2 of the last 3 Grey Cup games. But at the same time, I look at some of these and I'm like, wow, I know Danny is vertically challenged, but I mean, like, he was really trying to reach on a lot of these.
Yeah, I mean, Danny Machocha has forgotten more about football than I'll ever know. So tremendous
Likewise.
Respect to the man. And there's been drafts in the past where there have been picks that I've questioned and they've panned out. Tiger Shanks, I wasn't sure what he was going to be, and he started games at tackle last year and seems projected to do so again. Like, I just don't think there's those upside picks in this year. Whereas the Shanks, I was lower on. I was questioning. I didn't know what he would be or if he could reach his upside, but I saw that there was a path. I'm not sure I'm seeing the same paths with this year's group. So it seems like he was swinging on singles and maybe missing on a few of them.
Let's talk about this first round pick in Rohan Jones. I mean, I was a little baffled simply because, one, he's already signed. He signed as an undrafted free agent with the Los Angeles Rams. 2, I don't find Montreal really utilizes, like, I mean, nobody really uses tight end per se, but I mean, if you really compare it, like, say, to a fullback, aside from the occasional glimpses of David Dallaire and Jacob Mason, the Alouettes, I don't find, have ever been very good at using the fullback to their full potential. So what was it about Rohan Jones that made Danny say, yeah, that's my guy in the very first round?
Oh, let's set aside the NFL component for 1 minute and come back to it. Just the player itself. Take what you know about the fullback and the tight end position, destroy it, forget about it. That's not Rohan Jones. This is an entirely different animal, an entirely different beast. He is a position redefining player in my estimation. And I don't say this lightly. Started out at Maine. He was returning kicks for the Maine Black Bears. That's how athletic this guy is as a tight end. Goes up to Montana State. He's a first-team All-American at the FCS level for one of the best programs in the FCS. Then he gets his shot at Arkansas in the SEC as an undersized tight end. The question is this guy going to be making an impact at all? He's not the full-time starter there. He's a rotational piece. What impact can this guy have? Well, he comes onto the field. He gets over 500 yards receiving. He's averaging 27 yards a catch. He is routing guys up. He's going from the slot. He's going from the fullback position. He's going in line. He is averaging more yards per route run than not just any tight end in college football last season, any offensive player, more than any wide receiver, more than any running back. He was that explosive when he got those package opportunities. And he was the highest graded tight end in the nation, according to Pro Football Focus, whatever stock you want to put in their grades. Like, this is a legitimate offensive weapon, a guy who can do it all and do it at an extremely high level. He's not going to bowl you over as a blocker, but he can reach anybody. He's great in space. He'll fit you up. He'll finish. He'll do all the things you need there. You can line him up in the backfield. You can give him carries. You can give him sweeps. You can put him in the slot, and he'll be more athletic and more productive as a receiver than I think almost any wide receiver prospect in this draft class. He is a true position redefining weapon, and he gives you endless opportunities to be imaginative and come up with new schemes, new formations to utilize him. So don't let the position dictate it. You see the passes that they were able to get David Dallaire over the past couple seasons. Rohan Jones makes that a legitimate part of your offense all the time and a threat to score from anywhere on the field. Now, the challenge is he's going to get a substantial NFL look with the LA Rams, and the Rams basically changed the entire NFL draft this year because they used so many 13 personnel, 3 tight end sets over the last couple years that the whole NFL is now shifting towards that. And you saw a run of these later round tight ends. So Rohan Jones is going to the perfect team that loves to use extra tight ends and an offensive mind in Sean McVay that can utilize those unique abilities. Now, he's still small by NFL standards. He's more of an NFL fullback build, and that doesn't seem to be where the Rams project him. So maybe he slips through the cracks. But even as a fullback convert, if you look at the measurables, this guy's Kyle Juszczyk for the San Francisco 49ers. He is very similar to that. That's what he could be in my mind in the NFL. And I think he could be a genuine generational fullback, fullback, tight end, H, whatever you want to call him an offensive weapon, because that's what he can be if he comes up to the Montreal Alouettes.
Now, I'm curious to know what your thought is on this. Obviously, the Owls took a futures pick, and the Owls have done it before in the past, and many other teams have done it before in the past too. JC, when a team does this in the first round, does it kind of say to you like, okay, we're okay now, so we're going to do this futures pick? I don't want to call first round futures picks a waste because that's not always the case. But what's your thought when you have a team who says, you know what, I don't need somebody now. I'm going to go ahead and use my first round pick on a futures pick?
I think it sends the message that you're confident in your Canadian talent, and the Montreal Alouettes should be. Like, they're very good across the board. Now, there's risk reward with that. Anytime you put your hands up and say, we're good, well, in pro football, life comes at you fast. And guys can get injured, and it's good to have people in house. But there are legitimate reasons from a salary cap standpoint, from a roster management standpoint, why you might want to kick that can down the road, particularly when you have the opportunity to add a player who, he was fourth on my board. I know he was fourth on some teams' boards as well, like a genuine top of the draft type of guy. You say, hey, it doesn't matter that we won't see him now because we don't have a need now. We can benefit in 2-3 years. So I think that was a genuinely smart selection from the Alouettes, considering their lack of immediate needs. It's when we get later in the drafts with some of the selections that, to me, were them not necessarily going for best available, but going to fill specific special teams niche needs, or saying, well, this guy can make it, in a very small role versus dreaming bigger, that maybe become the problem with that draft thought process. Like, are these players you're sending back to school? And if you're drafting intentionally to send guys back to school, that suggests to me that you're maybe not thinking enough in terms of the insurance needed on a roster, but there's a lot to be determined with those players as well.
I know I'm jumping ahead, but weren't the Alouettes the only team to draft a punter? I mean, you had the global draft today. I mean, and considering we know who the Owls currently have on their roster as their kicker, I found that very odd. I don't know what your thought was when you originally saw that pick.
That was a head scratcher for me, I'll be honest, and not because of the player. Like, on talent alone, Michael Horvat would have been my top specialist. He ultimately was drafted as the top specialist. I had him at number 2 just because I do see him as a punter in particular. And if you're a punter, you just have less value in the current day and age because there's an endless stream of globals who can do it as good as better than you for cheaper. And so I think that puts Horvat in a difficult position. Now, he's as decorated as you'll ever see a U Sports kicker. 3 different All-Canadian selections, 6 different OUA selections, because he has occasionally got one as the kicker and one as the punter in the same season. He's pretty good at both tools, but he's a much better punter, 47-yard average on his kicks, gross. You like all those natural physical tools and the big leg. I just don't know how you justify using capital on that currently. And maybe the idea is we can make him a little bit better as a kicker, and now we've got a guy who can fill both roles. And that's valuable if that is the case. But from a punter's perspective, like, I have a really hard time seeing him making the roster with what they've got currently with Jose Maltos and with Joseph Zima. Like, you're either sending him back to school and then can you even bring him back? I don't know with the current roster rules. It's so difficult if you're going to bring a guy into a camp right now and then send them back to school. It's tough for me to justify picks that have such a long shot to make the roster at a position where it's very easy to pick up people for cheap as undrafteds.
All right, let's get to the second round. Arguably, I think probably the best name I've heard in a long time in the CFL, Shakespeare Lewis, defensive back from southeastern Louisiana. I mean, we're going to have a blast coming up with storylines and titles, for the show in regards to Shakespeare. I mean, you got comedy, you got tragedy, you've got every possibility here. I mean,
write a few sonnets.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, just that alone, I think was almost worth drafting him. But as far as actual football talent, what are the Alouettes getting with this particular young man?
He's a solid, smaller defensive back. I think the Alouettes might see him as a potential SAM insurance policy. I know that's something that they're considering with Jonathan Sutherland being able to play down there and Nate Beauchemin as well, having some flexibility. Like, Shakespeare Lewis is thick enough that he can do that. He's 5'10", 198. You see him as a solid tackler. He'll come down in the box and do those things. I have some concerns about that role because of his arm length, 30-inch arms, which for a smaller DB is fairly typical, but that makes it hard to get off of blocks in the run game and on special teams. And I think you see that at times on tape when he's forced to take on a guy. He can't really get off because he doesn't have the length. So it was a bit of a reach for me. I think he also shows a little bit of stiffness laterally. You see that in the testing. Doesn't necessarily have the most range up top as a free safety at Southeastern Louisiana, but has played a ton of ball down there, both at that school and Robert Morris. A solid player. I would have taken him a couple rounds later, not where the Alouettes selected him, but somebody I can see making the back end of your roster and was maybe shoehorned in because of the fact that the Alouettes are looking at starting a Sam and starting a safety as Canadians, and you need to build up that depth if you're going to go at some point in the future with Canadians at both of those spots. He helps in that regard.
All right. The position that I thought the Alouettes definitely needed help with was receiver, because aside from Tyson Philpott, Regis Sibasu, and Hakeem Harris, that's about the extent of your Canadian depth. So I thought wide receivers, there's plenty of them. We saw some absolute studs at the combine. And then the Alouettes go ahead in the third round and draft Nathan Udo out of Manitoba. And and surprisingly enough, and again, maybe there's a little bit of bias because we had him on the show, but Nick Senecal was still available at that point. And for whatever reason
as well.
Yes, also. So again, two guys that were definitely getting a lot of buzz, and Nathan Udo wasn't. So try to explain that to me like I'm 5 years old.
Well, I think what you're projecting with Udo is the size, right? This is a guy who is big and can be physical. He was really not productive at all until his last seasons at Manitoba this past year, but 6'1", 215, that projects well for special teams upside. Not the quickest guy, but decent speed. Runs a 4.6, decent mobility for his frame. I saw him as a late round flyer, somebody you'd want to potentially bring in for special teams at a position where the Alouettes needed it. Clearly, they saw him as a much better fit, but I don't know that I view him as a starter, a future starter in the CFL. When you're justifying him over guys like Nick Senecal and Nolan Ulm, it's because of the speed. Those guys both ran in the 4.7s. That's a major red flag for CFL futures. You worry about those guys making it in the league as a result, and specifically Senecal because he doesn't have a ton of special teams value. But even if you're going off Udo just based on the frame and the special teams value, well, he might be slower, but Nolan Ulm made 19 special teams tackles at Eastern Washington. He was a great contained man. He got down the field. He's ripped out of his mind. Like, there's some stiffness there, but there's stiffness with Udo. I'm not sure I'm seeing the projection on this guy that the Alouettes did, because he hasn't done the same degree on special teams. And yes, he was really good last year, but doesn't have that starter upside that I would want to take that high when there are so many talented receivers available. It was a head scratcher for me at a position that I had pegged the Alouettes to go and take somebody highly. I was not expecting this to be the name.
Me neither. In the fourth round, the Alouettes go for a running back. My assumption is to replace the retired Sean Thomas Erlington with Liam Talbot out of Windsor. This one I found a little surprising simply because you've got Stevie Scott and Travis Tice, who are both Americans. I feel like if you're going to invest in the running back position, maybe that's one where the Alouettes maybe don't bother with getting another national player or even a global player, but just focus on that. But they felt otherwise. And again, having seen some of his film, Talbot definitely has some speed, definitely has a good burst, but is there any other factors that would be potentially a reason why the Alouettes went with him?
Well, there's upside here on special teams, right? He's a guy who's both returned kicks and covered them very well in college at Windsor. He was never the feature back for the Lancers. That was Webe Mumbo, who goes later in the draft to the Toronto Argonauts, but it's not surprising that he was picked above the starter for Windsor because he just has better traits and better special teams value. I don't think he's a Sean Thomas Arlington in the sense that I don't necessarily see the same starting potential, but there are tools there to unlock. He tests incredibly well at the Invitational Combine. He's fast. He's explosive. You see that in moments on film. I think he can catch the ball a little bit, and then he'll go and cover kicks for you. He's strong and he's physical. So somebody that I can foresee making the Alouettes roster, even more so than somebody like Udo. But it's not necessarily going to be in a flashy capacity. This is going to be your 6 special teams tackle a year, backup running back type insurance policy. And there wasn't many of those guys available in this draft. So the Alouettes, maybe that incentivized them to take Talbot slightly higher than some people had him. But I think this one was in the ballpark for me in terms of where I expected it. And I can foresee a path for him on the roster.
Okay. And there's something about the Windsor Lancers that seems to really appeal to the Alouettes because in the 5th round, they took one of his teammates in Harrison Daly, but not a running back, but rather a defensive back. Now, I got to admit, I did watch his tape as well, and I definitely like his measurables. I definitely think he's a big body type, which may or may not be a good thing when it comes to defensive backs. I mean, considering some of the other ones that are in the league, but what have you seen in Harrison Daly, if anything?
Big and physical, and that's why you're drafting him, right? He's 6'3", over 200 pounds. He can pop coming over the middle as a free safety, long arms. Do I foresee him as a future replacement for Marc-Antoine Dequoy? No, I don't. I think he's too stiff. I don't think he runs well enough to actually play on defense. But is he going to be able to cover kicks? 100%. He is the type of body that you want to have as depth in your secondary in order to build out your special teams unit. And that's why he was always going to be selected in this draft, regardless of how he tested. You're adding yet another solid special teams piece with Daly.
All right, we already talked about Michael Horvat, kicker out of McMaster, so we'll just bypass that. In the 7th round, the Alouettes go with Cyrus McGarrell, DB from Northern Illinois. First time since round 2 where they go back to NCAA. I gotta admit, I saw this guy. I'm like, okay, this has potential. I think he's. One thing I did notice with him is just not flashy in the sense that I think a lot of what you're saying, and maybe this is kind of the theme that we're going with here with as far as like special teams go. Like I think this is the kind of guy that I think could be a special teams demon if put in the right environment, which invariably he should be with Byron Archambault as the special teams coach.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it there. I was actually expecting McGarrell to go a little bit higher due to the NCAA pedigree and his size. Tested really, really well at the NIU Pro Day. I thought helped himself at the CFL Combine a little bit. You love the frame. You love the athletic measurables. He did start games at times for the Huskies, but was mostly a backup and a special teamer. And only played 2 games last year. Wasn't able to get on the field due to injury. So didn't have a ton of defensive experience, and you see some limitations to his game when he was out there on defense, but there was some flash plays as well. He's a solid tackler. He's physical. Again, it's shades of the same thing with Shakespeare Louis and Harrison Daly. You're going with a third special teams defensive back to round out a group where you're trying to potentially shore up 2 positions instead of just 1.
And last but certainly not least, the Montreal Alouettes in the 8th round go after their first Saint FX receiver since Keon Julian Grant, and they select Zachary Hood. I saw some nice bursts out of him as well, but I honestly didn't find very much film. But like what I found looked decent, but again, I don't know if this is someone that's going to make any noise, quite frankly, when he's brought into training camp.
Yeah, he's your sort of classic U Sports slot, play at a lower level of competition at Saint FX, but was extremely productive from the moment he stepped on campus. Multi-time AUS All-Star, the AUS Rookie of the Year in his first season. Very, very productive in that X-Men offense. And what I loved about him, guys, as part of his story is the East-West Bowl, which happens in May every year for guys in the following year's draft, is sort of your benchmark to decide, okay, this guy's a prospect, this guy is not, right? People come in, they run more of an amateurish combine, but there are numbers put on the board. And for guys who have not trained and are raw, you get the benchmark of their athleticism. And Hood came in like so many receivers with his body type and his production, and he did not test well in any category. He looked incredibly poor in those numbers. And as a result, I basically dismissed him from my board. I thought, this is your classic productive AUS player who has no CFL measurables, cross out. He comes into the Invitational Combine this year, which is the only reason with his production that he'd be at the Invitational is people thought he had no measurables. And his teammate, Devin Blackwood, who was not picked in this year's draft, was invited straight to the National because people didn't see him test at the East-West because he wasn't healthy. And they thought maybe he had something that Zachary Hood didn't have. What Zachary Hood came to the Invitational and he improved across the board, not just slightly, but dramatically. Now, they're not world beater numbers, by any stretch of the imagination, but he jumped further. He ran faster, and he was 10 pounds heavier. Like, this is clearly a guy who took the feedback a year ago and said, I've got to make myself better. And if I want to have a shot as a pro, I need to improve. And he did that. Is he going to make the Alouettes roster? I think it's a long shot. I don't know that he has a ton of special teams value, despite the fact that he's a little bit heavier these days. And, he's not overly explosive as a slot receiver, but this is a guy who deserved an opportunity. And I was happy to see him picked in the 8th round. He's somebody that fans should root for, even if he is a long shot.
Now, obviously, with the draft that happened yesterday, we got the global draft today. Before we talk about the Alouettes picks here, JC, I want to read something that came across social media today. I want to hear what your thought is on this. It came from Darren Gill. He goes, if the goal of the CFL's global draft was to grow the game internationally, why were 10 of the 18 picks in 2026 specialists? That's not building stars. That's filling roster spots to replace high-value Canadians. It's time for a review of the global program. So before we talk about the Owls picks, what are your thoughts on what he happened to say?
I'm going to disagree with Gil on one point and then agree with him on his larger point. I don't think it's replacing high-value Canadians. I think it's generally replaced low-value Canadians at the kicking position. CFL teams will tell you, and the numbers will show you, that punting in this league has improved dramatically with the addition of these Aussies because they are incredibly good at it. And before, while you were shoehorning sort of your average to below average Canadian specialist in because you didn't want to have to use an American at that spot, and teams were desperately trying to find these guys, and they were taking years to develop, and they were super inconsistent. You got plug and play guys coming in like a factory at low cost at this stage. So it's actually helped the league out there in that one nuanced area. But is it time for a review of the global program? Absolutely, because this program is fatally flawed. And part of the reason why teams are so abundantly drafting these specialists is because, A, they can keep the supply and demand in their favor, so they keep costs low at that position. But B, most of these teams have no incentive to add global talent. And that might seem counterintuitive because you'd think a team wants to add talent no matter what. But the rules as they stand currently are teams are allowed to play 2 global players. And the thought process when that rule was put in place by the league was that you can play 2 and those are your designated global spots. But if you wanted to play more, that's fine. They can take the place of an American. No harm, no foul, as long as they're not taking a Canadian roster spot. That works out well. A few years back, the CFLPA pushed back on that interpretation in order to protect American jobs, and they have made it a hard and fast 2 global rule. And that would have been no big deal in the first year of the global program when people thought there was no talent available internationally and these players weren't good enough to make CFL rosters. But we've had an influx of NCAA players, and every single team has multiple globals that they are confident in, not just punters. And 8 of the 9 teams have punters, but we have kickers like in Montreal, and we've got impactful players on offense and defense, right? You're seeing Giovanni Robinson score for the Hamilton Tiger Cats as a tight end. You're seeing Habakkuk Baldonado get paid like a legit American starter and break the bank to come over in free agency to Ottawa. Thibaut Dubai is an important piece of the rotation in BC. Every single team has guys like that they are confident in putting on the field and who have essentially guaranteed roster spots for themselves. And so if you've got that locked up, you can't play anybody else. So you're asking them to come and make a couple $100 a week on the practice roster instead of going back to their home countries where they could potentially make more money than that and live cheaper as well. And it's not a good equation. You can't build the talent like that. So if somebody is drafting certainly a position player, it's because A, they're a futures pick and they will not have to bring them to camp immediately, or they project them onto the roster in the very near future as an upgrade over their current guy. There is not an incentive to build competition at all under the current system. And as a result, the global program, in my estimation, is not long for this world. When this CBA comes up, whether it expires naturally in a couple years' time, or whether one of the sides takes the opt-out here at the end of this coming season because there's a new TV deal signed, I think the first thing on the chopping block will be the global program, because there is no appetite for the league to fight with the union in any capacity over expanding the amount of spots for globals or giving teams more flexibility there. And at that point, it becomes a sacrificial lamb and there's no point in keeping it. So it's a fundamentally flawed program that has been mismanaged from the very beginning.
So that said, the Owls picked up the Owls had the first 8th overall pick in the first round, and they picked up offensive lineman Mark Petrie out of Germany. He played at Syracuse. We've had a couple guys on the team that obviously have played at Syracuse. Any thoughts on Petrie?
Yeah, Petrie is a very solid offensive lineman, was a starter at right tackle, then a starter at right guard for the Orange. Unfortunately, he fell in the NFL process only because he missed all of last season with an ACL tear. And it happened in the spring. He said, I'm not going to rush it back to play the last couple games or suit up for a bowl game. I'm going to take this whole year and focus on getting myself ready for the NFL draft. And it dropped him off the radar. He's a guy who can be, a potential swing player, start at guard, start at tackle if you need him to. He's athletic. He's physical in a phone booth. He can grind you out in the run game. I really like the measurables that he brings to the table. And these offensive linemen through the global program, because it is so challenging to get them on the field and there's no rotational value, primarily it's about getting them on the practice roster, and he's going to make everybody around him better. I think he'll be an upgrade over a guy that they had for the last couple of years in Norden Newley. I think Petrie's better than him, and maybe he threatens for a backup guard spot and gets on the field with some injuries. He is a good enough player to do that. Multi-year starter at a big time college program.
It's funny to say. Is his age of 27? Oh no! Is his age of 27 a concern?
I think it's always a concern with prospects. It's probably a less of a concern for CFL teams, just because as Americans, lots of Americans come up at 27. If you're a Montreal Alouette and you've been drafting from the RSEQ for forever, those guys are basically cashing Social Security at that point because they're so old. So, Mark Petrie is not outside the norm. Now, does it limit his developmental potential? Absolutely, right? He is now closer to his peak than anybody else. You don't think you can do as much to improve him. Does it also make the injury slightly more concerning? Possibly. He's a little bit older. Maybe it's a little bit harder for him to bounce back. Those are all factors, but 27 is not disqualifying. It's just another data point that you have to take into consideration. And offensive linemen peak later, so it may actually be a bit of an advantage there.
Yeah. And
God, I hate to think of 27 as long in the tooth, but my goodness.
No, I know.
As a 28-year-old, so do I.
I were joking about it before. Owls taking a punter in the 6th round, but they take another punter, another Aussie. There's a surprise too. Australian punter Josh Burgess. He played his last 2 seasons over at Texas Tech, and then he also played over at Weber State. JC, his numbers are pretty good. I mean, I can't complain about that. But as we joked about before when we first started, the Owls are adding another punter, another Aussie punter, and again, currently look at the pedigree that the Alouettes have currently on their active roster.
Yeah, he's a practice roster guy. I don't think he's going to unseat Joseph Zima, but big leg, has the tools you need. There's not a whole lot of nuance you can get into with the punters here, but yeah, Jack Burgess is a very good player. Would not be out of place on a CFL field. Would absolutely give you value. He's probably your insurance policy, and the Owls have cycled through a number of guys in that role over the last few years. Your, Sam Clark's, your, whoever it may be. He's the next guy, and I think he's a better pedigree than some of the players they've had in the past.
Man, I mean, you got a new punter in Michael Horvat, a new one in Jack Burgess. I'm sure Joseph Zima is not having any sleepless nights as a result of this, but at the same time, I guess competition does make everybody better, I guess. Like iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Zima and all the other global punters know where their bread is buttered at this point, and they've known since the last time they had to negotiate a contract, because they're dealing in dollars and cents here instead of tens of thousands in terms of what the increases they can negotiate, because the next guy is sitting right behind him constantly, and that's going to be the case for the Alouettes for the foreseeable future.
Burgess is he's dealing in dollar dues.
I
had to say it.
Well done. JC, was there anybody in the draft that wasn't taken in the draft last night that you're just floored didn't find a roster spot?
Floored is probably a strong word, but there were some shocking omissions, I guess you could say. Jerome Rancourt, the tight end fullback from Western, was the big one for me. He has a chance to go back to the Mustangs and be their starting quarterback next year. That might be part of the reason why he wasn't taken, but 6'4", 260, runs a 4.8, like incredible athlete. Extremely good at short yardage, but physical enough to play as an inline tight end and be a blocker. You look at what the Bombers did to trade up for Dante Daniels. I'm not a fan of that move, but certainly it's something that happened. Same thing last year. The Calgary Stampeders drafted Quincy Vaughn in the second round, and wasn't a fan of that move either. But Jerome Rancourt is a player in a similar mold to those two guys, and he doesn't get picked at all. To me, that means there's more to the story, whether he's told teams that, hey, I might not play at all, whether he's got academic opportunities, whether there's something else that's been flagged. I don't know. But I was certainly surprised to not see him picked. And then the other one that was a major surprise to me, Ottawa defensive back Patrick Cumberbatch. Now, I wasn't a huge Cumberbatch fan. I had to convince myself to be more of a Cumberbatch fan, because last year I was not an Eric Cumberbatch fan, his identical twin brother, and he got drafted in the 5th round by Ottawa and played some games for them. You've got essentially the same player in Patrick, right? They are the same build. They both test freakishly athletic and jump out of the gym, and yet a year removed from his brother going in the 5th round and seeing the field for the Red Blacks, Patrick's not selected at all. And I know he was a year behind him in school because there was some academic issues. Maybe that was something that, concerned teams in terms of his ability to pick up a playbook, and that dropped him down a few boards. It's entirely possible, but there was, players with similar measurables taken with bigger reaches in this draft. And I would have expected Patrick Cumberbatch to be somebody who a team bet on at a certain point.
Wow. Well, and I guess that's part of the fun now, is waiting to see if anybody's going to be signed as an undrafted free agent in the CFL.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we hear it all the time in the NFL after the NFL draft, but it's not something I don't feel you hear a whole lot of in the CFL, but it is definitely a possibility.
It's tough. The camp roster rules as they stand, all these draft picks come into training camp as non-counters, which means when you have those cut down dates, whether it's 85 players, 75 players, they are not counted into that total until the final roster cut down. So they essentially get the benefit of a whole training camp. Now, you get that for your draft picks, and you've always gotten it for 2 additional players. This is supposed to be your undrafted free agents. You can bring in a couple of those guys. But unfortunately, a couple years back, the CFLPA brought up with the league a grievance, not an official one, but they pressed the issue with the CFL that the league was allowing teams to count or not count the players from previous draft classes that had gone back to school. So a player who was in training camp once, got cut, sent back to school, come back to training camp for a second time, they were also letting those guys be non-counters. And the CFLPA felt that that went against the language in the CBA, and they pressed the issue, and the league was forced to crack down on it. So now if you send a guy back to school, as so many guys do in the case of the Alouettes, you're thinking of Gabriel Maisonneuve, Gabriel Lessard from last year's draft. Those two guys both went back to school. Well, they're your non-counters now. They can be added as those two guys, and if you don't use them as those two spots, they count, and the pressure's on to make a decision on whether to cut them or not. So that has reduced the flexibility that CFL teams have with those additional non-counter spots. It's made it so that there's less guys coming back after being sent to U Sports schools for their fifth year, and there are less undrafted free agents being signed than ever before. And I expect we'll also see some cuts from some of the guys that were in one of those scenarios, but are currently under contract, and teams have found a better option before training camp. They won't even get a shot to suit up. They'll get zipped before that point because of those current roster rule interpretations.
So much for that old adage of telling like draft prospects, okay, just stay ready to go. Your opportunity is going to come, just not right now.
No, it's more difficult than ever for those guys, and it's unfortunate. I think it's a short-sighted decision by the CFLPA to press that issue, but ultimately they're adherent to their veteran members. And if you're a guy who's been around the CFL for a number of years, that rookie is the guy coming to take your job. And when he's got the advantage of a whole training camp because he doesn't count, but you do, that does put you at a disadvantage. And so the PA worked to protect veterans. And as a result, it's made it harder for blossoming young Canadian talents to beat the odds and make a CFL roster.
Wow. At the end of the day, though, we've got some new members of Alouettes Nation, and fans should be excited about that, especially with training camp basically 2 weeks away. Like rookie camp, I should say, is next week. So in less than 2 weeks, teams are going to get on the field, and we may hopefully see some of, if not all of these guys in the roster. So no matter what, even if we don't know these players yet, this is their opportunity to show that they do belong here on this roster.
Mm-hmm.
One question I wanted to ask JC before we let him go. Obviously, with the modifications that were announced yesterday by the CFL, I'm curious to know, what is your thought now that the CFL Canadian draft is going to be prior to the NFL draft in 2027?
It's going to be incredibly challenging for teams. And, there's GMs that spoke about it today, multiple GMs. I know Kyle Walters had some choice words in Winnipeg. I was over at the BC Lions practice facility. Ryan Rigmaiden, made his opinion known about it as well, that it's going to be difficult for CFL teams on a number of levels, not just from the assessment standpoint of saying, I don't know if this guy's going to be an NFL draft pick, a UDFA, a mini camp offer, how much guaranteed money he's going to receive, what team he ends up with that determines his fit and how likely he is to stick around. All of those factors are at play, and you've got certainty at this point. Teams can judge and make educated guesses. They've done it in the past for years and years and years. The CFL draft was before the NFL draft, and for years and years and years, they used to draft NCAA guys a year before they were even NFL draft eligible. So the seasoned hands in the league, know how to make some educated guesses, and they've got NFL connections that will be able to tell them the level of interest in those guys. That's not the primary concern. The primary concern with the season moving up is anybody who's got an NFL minicamp, an opportunity down south, now is not going to be ready until quite late in training camp, because those mini camps can run, May 10th through the 13th, different dates like that. That's going to be well into the end of training camp before you see these guys. And that puts those high draft picks at a disadvantage. It's going to make them tough to make the active roster early in the season. And then you're going to be having to figure out how to, protect them, because you can't put them on the practice roster. Another team's going to poach them. The CFLPA won't want you to put them on the one game because they're not really injured and they don't look that load management label. So there's going to be some challenges in terms of how teams do that. It's going to be challenging in terms of bringing in Americans that may have not gotten drafted or were minicamp invites that you may have otherwise had in training camp. Those guys won't be up anymore. And the factor that I think is being most overlooked by the CFL, and I think many media members aren't aware of this, is think about the other draft picks who do not have NFL opportunities, because you do not make generational money in the CFL. You need to have a plan after football. And these guys are student athletes in youth sports schools in the truest sense of the word. And they still have exams. They will not be done taking their exams in time for training camp, which means some of your 5th, 6th, 7th round picks, the guys who are never even sniffing an NFL opportunity, also won't be able to report in time. And that has caused teams some consternation. Maybe that opens up temporary opportunities for some of the guys we just talked about, the guys coming back after 50 years, undrafted guys, things like that, to come into a camp early, try and impress before the rest of the draft picks arrive. There's a potential there, but ultimately it's going to be really difficult for teams to manage these logistics. And, there's another factor at play as well. Most CFL teams run their training camps at universities. Where are you going to stay when class is in session? That's going to cause some reevaluation of where teams hold those camps and what they're able to do. So there's all sorts of nuances here that are beyond the revenue dollars and cents of summer, meaning more money for the league and a nicer viewing experience for fans. It's going to put teams in a bind, maybe not an unsurmountable one, but a real bind.
God, I never thought about that. And especially just this year, the Owls are going to be, it's in Quebec City at Peps, U Laval. Wow. I didn't even think about that one, man. I'm glad I asked the question, actually.
To be honest, I hadn't thought of it either. And it came up in our interview with Ryan Rigming today, where he said, look, we're at Thompson Rivers University, and we may not be able to go to the place that we've had training camp for years and years and years in the future, because it's not going to be available to us. They're not going to have the space for what we need to accommodate when we need to accommodate it. So that's going to be an interesting challenge that every team will have to address.
So, Commissioner, do we need to get over that?
I don't know. Maybe Stu's going to put them up. I don't know.
How about you just fix the bloody draft tracker? I mean,
that's first.
Let's start with that, and then because Lord knows there's more than enough complications as it is. But start with something small, or at least what should be small. But because we were promised at Grey Cup, we were promised a brand new website, new team websites. Oh yeah, and we're never going to have this issue again.
I was about to say, JC, you were there. You know exactly what we're talking about.
He said it right to me. I think it was Hodge who asked the question. It was, I have seen nothing on that front, and boy, oh boy. I don't know. I don't know that I could do another year like this, guys.
He made other promises too, concerning stuff that's supposed to happen in 27. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But anyways, that's for another discussion. JC, we so knowledgeable. We appreciate you every year you come on. I'm hoping Al's Nation and the guys who are watching the show this week, I've gotten a lot of information from you on the new Alouettes that are going to be a part of camp this year in Quebec City. And man, we need to try to find a way to get you to come on when it's not during camp, not when it comes to the draft, and to talk about some other stuff, because you're a wealth of knowledge, my friend.
I appreciate that. I'm always happy to come on. It was a pleasure, as it always is, and love chopping it up with you guys.
Awesome. JC, ladies and gentlemen, 3downnation.com. Go check him out. Go check out his work. The guy works his butt off. My goodness. JC, we appreciate you so much for coming on, breaking all this down for us. Thanks again. And again, here's hoping for a more interesting season, but maybe not so interesting, if you know what I'm saying.
Fingers crossed.
Top-notch coverage as usual from JC. One thing I wanted to at least mention to you, and I don't know what I wanted to get your thoughts on it, is that right at the very end, I wanted to make sure that we at least ask the question, because I know we'll be talking about the big news here in a couple of minutes, that the CFL dropped on everybody, which to me, in my opinion, really usurped and took away from what the CFL Canadian draft was this year. Don't understand it. But I had to ask that question when it came to the potential changes to the calendar and what's going to happen with the CFL draft. JC, I think, had some great ideas on what could happen. We'll see what happens, obviously, because but all in all, what do you think about what JC had to talk about our draft picks, and what he had to say when it came to the potential changes coming up for 2027?
I think it was a great way for us to sort of put the bow on our sort of draft coverage, if you will, here at the Alouettes Flight Deck. I mean, starting at, myself going to the Combine in Edmonton in March, speaking with the Draft Prospect Series gentlemen that we did, and to have everything all culminate with the draft and getting JC's thoughts on this as well. I mean, it is crucial. As far as I'm concerned, it's a very important part. And in a lot of ways, it does sort of kickstart the CFL season when you really think about it. I mean, less than 2 weeks, these guys are going to get on the field with the veterans, and everybody's going to be fighting for a job. And to me, that is a great indicator that the offseason is almost finished, and we're about to get back to what we love, and that's Canadian football. But there is still sort of that other thing that kind of happened, and I have to say, I'm all for dropping, generational news and things that are going to really get people talking, which this news certainly did. But of all the friggin' days to do it, you do it on the day of the draft. What the absolute F was that? I mean, that is short-sighted. So, I guess short-sighted.
That's the only word. Short-sighted. Yeah, short-sighted is the word. I don't.
You had a whole winter to talk about this, to drop this news on everybody. It never ceases to amaze me the way that the CFL, and I do love it, don't get me wrong, but they cannot ever truly get out of their own way when it comes to stuff like this. Between this and then the CFL draft tracker pooping the bed yet again, the second year in a row. I mean, and
who knew we needed that sequel?
Well, listen, this is, you want to talk about sequels. This isn't The Dark Knight or The Godfather 2.
It's no Avengers movie either.
Nope. This was this would be like the straight to direct to video, bargain basement bin kind of sequel. Like, holy crap. Like,
we're dating ourselves just by saying that. You know that, right?
We really are. But I digress. It's yeah. Talk about horrible timing. Absolutely horrible timing to drop news like this. I mean, you couldn't have waited a day, even if they dropped this news on the Wednesday of this week. Yeah. Okay, fine. I mean, it would have taken a little bit of the wind out of the sails of the draft and all that, but to do it before the draft, like you basically just pissed all over it, quite frankly. I mean, that's it's really mind-boggling. It really truly is mind, especially too when this news doesn't even take place until 2027. So you literally could have picked any other day to drop this news. And instead you just, took, all that great momentum. And let's be honest, this was a great draft class. There was so much potential. There are so many guys that I feel are going to be superstars in this league. Not right away. Some might, but for the most part, I feel like a lot of these players have the potential to be superstars in this league. And you just basically cut them off at the knees with, the attention and the focus going on to this news, as opposed to these young superstars in training. It is so CFL. It's not even funny.
No, I agree. It could have been done at any other time. The last announcement that was made when it came to the expected changes to the field and stuff like that was made when we didn't expect it either. But there was nothing major going on at that time within the news cycle. And I was it had anything to do with the news cycle? I don't think so. You had the draft going on. I just, it's like they, for some reason, I think this is a good analogy. The CFL felt necessary to add some sprinkles onto their ice cream for the day. You don't need any more sprinkles, man. You had the ice cream already.
Yeah, this isn't taking a good thing and making it better. This is taking a good thing and dropping it in the mud, quite frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I should take that away. Maybe it isn't sprinkles, considering how a lot of people feel about it. It probably, maybe, I don't know, something that you don't want on your ice cream. How about this? A lactose intolerant person eating ice cream. That's what the announcement was kind of like. It's going to make you feel sick no matter what. You may like it, the taste of the ice cream, but this is going to leave a bad taste in your mouth and in your gut. So, yeah.
All right.
But the draft's over. We got camp coming up, as you mentioned, and that's what we're gonna, just in a couple of days, we'll see how many of these guys at the Alouettes do sign, and we'll go from there. And I think what's funny, and it's just a real quick comment, and then we'll move on to the next topic, is that, as we talked about, the Alouettes decided they did draft a tight end, and then today on the transaction wire, the Owls sign another tight end. I mean, yes, he's not Canadian. I get that, but what? Anyways, it still isn't Danny Machocha we trust. It still is, because as we were talking, we were glowing about earlier, Danny does have a good track record. So
he does. And I've said it before, and I will say it again. You can question the methods, but you can't argue with the results. The Alouettes have been in 2 Grey Cup games in the past 3 years, and a lot of that featuring talent that Danny Machocha had drafted. So, it's very easy to look at this draft class and say, what, to some of these choices, but I think Danny has truly earned the benefit of the doubt. And if he says those are the guys, I don't want to say blindly go into it saying, whatever he says goes, but at the same time, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, he knows what he's doing. I mean, he hasn't had too many whiffs when you really think about it, as far as draft goes. Like, some players don't pan out. You're going to get that no matter what, regardless of the team, regardless of the player, regardless of the draft year. You're always going to find some duds. It happens. You can do all the research. You can the scouts can watch all the film, and you can make all the decisions and think that you've got the right guy, and it just doesn't work out. That's football. That happens. It'll happen to every single team. But look at some of the guys that Danny has taken a chance on, even like undrafted free agents that signed in the NFL. Guys like Pierre-Olivier Lestage, Marc-Antoine Dequoy, Jonathan Sutherland, who we're finally getting to see play this year. So, okay, if Danny says in the first round he's going to go after Rohan Jones, who just signed a UDFA deal with the Los Angeles Rams. Okay, well, I guess we're only going to see him in 2029, I guess, if history tells us anything. But okay.
At least you didn't say Yudfa.
Yeah. At least for that.
Sorry.
Wow. But again, all this to say that as underwhelming as this draft class looks on paper, we all know what happens to paper. We all know what happens to paper, right? Exactly. So,
by the way, did you know that we're on social media? We're all over the internet. I want to go to check out our archive. Head over to www.alouettesflightdeck.ca. You can find us on X or Blue Sky over at Alouettes FL Deck. Facebook over at Alouettes Flight Deck Pod. Instagram and YouTube over at Alouettes Flight Deck. YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell button to know when new shows or new content becomes available. And coming up very shortly, the premiere episode of the 2026 season of Flight Deck Live. Day 1 in Quebec City. Stay tuned for that. Yes, sir. Looking for some merch? Head over to flightdeckgear.ca. Rep the show as best as possible. There's many things to choose from. And lastly, I want to thank our presenting sponsor in Royal Retros. If you head over to royalretros.com and use the code FlightDeck at checkout, you will save 10% off your entire order. Okay. So we said it said in our teaser at the beginning of the show. It was, what did I say? Game changing, or whatever terminology it is that the league is trying to use. We've now had two game changing announcements over the last 2 years, and this one was interesting. You've had GMs say things in the media. You've had players openly mock. Was what Brady Oliveira did? Yeah, I'll say he mocked it.
Criticized.
Yeah. What's been done? The curling community is going wild. Sorry, I had to do it. But I mean, for those who don't know, the CFL announced a major change and shift in not only the schedule for 2027 and the key dates, but also for how the playoffs, the Grey Cup playoffs, are going to be structured. We'll talk about the dates here in a minute, but the big thing is that we're now going from 3 weeks of postseason, 3 weeks of postseason to 4. And we're now going from 6 to 8 teams making the playoffs. Now, I joked, when we talk about the week 1 play-in game, somebody could easily go, well, you know what, Cliff? 8 teams really aren't making the playoffs, Cliff. They really aren't, because 4 of them, it's just the play-in. Technically, 6 only make the playoffs. So if I were to say that to you, Cliff, what would your response be back to me?
Well,
keep it clean.
Son of a biscuit-eating bulldog. Well, I have to question the, I guess it would all depend on the teams that would be seeded, and that's the thing too that we can't forget now. It's about seeding, basically from 1 to 8, so to speak. Like the 9th team, no hope in hell. I mean, they're just out, completely out. Whereas teams that are seeded 5, 6, 7, 8, even if they've got less than stellar records, have a chance to make the playoffs, participate in them, and possibly even get all the way to the Grey Cup. Now, it's not so cut and dry. It's not a guarantee that the 8th place team is going to, catch fire at the right time and make it all the way to the Grey Cup. If they do, then that may speak more to the higher seeded teams and their inability to win when it counts.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're in a situation where I think now you've got a 9-team league and 89% of the teams are technically going to make the playoffs. And as if the CFL didn't have enough of an image problem, as far as, before it was 66% of the teams made the playoffs. Now it's 89%. It's that perception. And as I've said in the past, perception is often a reality.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I get why fans are up in arms over this. Was it really a problem? Is this going to create more revenue? Technically, it will, because now, especially for the first seeded teams, they essentially get 2 home playoff games. So as far as this talk that the regular season doesn't count anymore, or it basically doesn't count anymore, is
it really doesn't.
Yes and no. I get that.
You got to get to the first or second seed. I get that to be able to advance in the page playoff, and that's what, by the way, that's where my curling reference was too, because first and second place automatically play each other, and even depending on which team wins, the winner moves on to round 3 to the semis, and then the loser goes on to I guess we can call it they've even changed the name to this. I would still call it the quarters, but they call it the elimination game. They move on, even though they lost, and host a game.
It's still the Eastern Division semifinals and Eastern Finals, or Western Division semifinals or finals. It's just there's a slight wrinkle to it now. And one thing I will say though is, you have complained numerous times about these glorified preseason games, as I like to call them, like the regular season games towards the end. I think if you're looking for a positive to this, now all of a sudden you're not going to see as many of these games, and they may be eliminated altogether, because when you're talking about seeding, everything counts now. Everything's important. So you're not going to see.
My response is, will we? Are you sure? Depending on how the distance between these teams in the standings, it is very possible we may still see, unfortunately, these glorified preseason games in week 21.
See, anything's possible, really. Or we could see it. A lot will depend on just how tightly contested each division is, and it could be a simple matter of, you may need to win that last game, and that could be the difference between being, seeded 3rd or seeded 5th or even seeded 8th. I mean, it's true. It will make things
home game or not, clinching a home game or not, because we know right now, the first round and the knockout. Sorry, I got to get these terms right. The showdown round and then the play-ins. You want to be a 1 seed, a 6 seed, or a 5 seed, because you will get a home game.
Yeah.
So,
and I think there's some variables here that, ultimately the goal will be, especially like, the owners, they're going to want to do whatever they can to ensure that they get 2 home playoff games, because that's extra revenue, that's extra gate, that's extra merchandise sold, that's extra concessions, and so on. All in all, a chance to make more money for the coffers. And I think that's what's going to appeal. And I think for CFL fans, it's still more football when you think about it. I'll be honest. I think it's kind of bizarre, this whole setup. Is this something that we really truly needed? I don't think so. I think the playoff thing was just fine. I think if we had more teams in the Canadian Football League, maybe this page playoff system would make a little more sense. I mean, unfortunately, though,
hell, go to the 2-game aggregate. I'd take that in a heartbeat.
It's.
I can tell you're frustrated. I think we all are, Cliff.
I think it's also in the fact too, because in 2027 we're going to be seeing so many rule changes as well, and now we're going to have this on top of that.
I know,
and with the season also too being moved up a considerable bit, that too is also, I think, weighing on a lot of people as well.
And I want you to, once you're done with your statement, go ahead and expound on just that statement once you're done.
Yeah, I mean, all of a sudden now, basically the the Canadian Football League regular season will be starting on Victoria Day weekend or May 2-4 weekend, whatever you call it. I know it's called different things in different provinces, but basically the third weekend of May is essentially when the CFL regular season is going to be getting underway. Whereas this year,
I got the dates, by the way, but continue. I look at the next 5 years, but continue.
Yeah. The like this year, for example, May long weekend is going to still be training camp, and now next in 2027, it's going to be the start of the regular season, which means literally everything, has to be done sooner. You're now looking at the combine being in early March. The CFL Canadian draft is going to be, I believe, April 13th.
Yes,
which is actually well before the NFL draft, which typically is the third weekend of, or the last weekend of April. So this is going to present a whole other challenge for CFL GMs, because you'll make your picks, and some of these guys that you've picked in the draft may still end up being drafted by NFL teams or offered undrafted free agent contracts.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a whole logistical nightmare, or has potential to be a logistical nightmare, because you've got guys that are going to be going to camps, but at the same time could be invited to rookie mini camps as well, which also will be taking place while training camp is now going on for Canadian Football League teams.
Yeah.
So how do you handle that landmine? How do you step around that? I mean, it's going to be weird.
And then training camps, rookie camps open up April 21st. Training camps open up April 24th. This is in 2027, obviously.
Yes.
And we know how winter was this year and when winter technically starts. Spring starts. Doesn't mean it's going to be spring. I mean, are we going to have teams now going to camp and it's going to be minus X, like it's November or October? November.
Snow on
November,
the ground.
really? Snow on the ground. There's so many variables to this. There's so many. And it is, as you stated before, with all these different changes next year, you still got to deal with stuff that's supposed to happen. Like, what's Percival Molson still needs to get their new turf. I mean, that's on top of it. And every other stadium also needs to make sure they're going to be able to shift if U Sports says no in June, which you and I are almost certain that they will, switching over to the CFO rules, the new rules, all these stadiums will have to have these shifted. I think the only stadium that I think we heard that has it currently set up that way is BC. Those are available in BC. Mm-hmm. Real quickly, by the way, Victoria Day for the next couple of years, May 24th, May 22nd, May 21st, May 20th. This is going backwards. May 19th, May 19th. May 19th. And then I think it goes back up to the 24th, if I'm not mistaken. Thanksgiving. We got to throw this in because Thanksgiving, they're promoting. Okay, I get this. They're promoting the long weekends. That's cool. Even Saint Jean. Saint Jean does not fall on the weekend every year. What's going to happen then? Thanksgiving Day, which seems to be the de facto, from what I'm saying. If you think the same thing too, let me know. Or if I'm wrong, let me know. That Thanksgiving will be the de facto last week 21 of the season. That this week it's the 11th, October 11th. Then it's October 9th. Then it's October 8th. Then it's October 14th. Then it's October 13th. I mean, it's still always a long weekend. That's the thing. It's always a long weekend, but it's when it falls. There's so many things. And I mean, they still haven't told us how they're going to work the 35-second clock under 3 minutes for this year.
Nope.
So many variables.
So in a lot, and I'm sure some of the people argue that the last true CFL season just finished because a couple of these rule changes will be taking effect this season. But I mean, I guess really truly it will be the last true CFL season for a lot of people because of these changes, because of the scheduling, because of all these factors.
By the way, we see this. Talk about all these changes. It wouldn't surprise me, Cliff. Come 2027, the new CFL, new logo. Wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't put it past them. Because I will admit, I like the branding that they did for the playoffs. It looks very Stanley Cup-ish. The way that it looks, the main logo with the Grey Cup. I like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if with this new CFL, they come out with a new logo. Again, wouldn't put it past them. And then off air with JC today, he brought up some very good points. Camp. When it's going to start. How are some of these teams going to be able to have housing available for their players if it's at a U Sport location? Mm-hmm. If they're still in class. And it's not just one team that's affected by it. I mean, Montreal would have been this year. Who did he mention? Was it
BC?
Yeah, BC would be.
Because they're out in Kamloops, but they're out of university. And if they still got classes.
Toronto's in Guelph this year.
That's right.
So.
Saskatoon, I believe they also, the Riders are, I should say.
Yeah. No, but yeah, you're right. So there are more variables, and it makes me wonder if they're thinking or not.
Or does that mean they don't have these training camps in these locales and they truly keep it in-house, like keep it at your stadium, so to speak, and then players just stay at hotels close to the stadium kind of thing? I mean...
Yeah, I don't know. Well, 27 will be very interesting, to say the least. Now...
To say the least.
Did we leave anything out?
Round
one of the playoffs are calling division showdowns and the play-in games. Then round 2 is the elimination games. Round 3 is the Grey Cup semifinals, and then the earliest we already knew the state. The state wasn't surprising. We knew the state already for the Grey Cup, but now we kind of see what they were working with in their heads. This will be the earliest Grey Cup ever in league history, and it will also be the earliest. Excuse me. It will also be the earliest kickoff that we thought this year was. It'll be the earliest kickoff in CFL history in 2027 to start a season.
Doing everything they can to avoid the dreaded snow game or, playoff games in like minus 20, minus 30 temperatures or anything like that. Trying to keep it, I guess, is still football weather. I mean, I've always said autumn is definitely 100% football weather, but
yeah.
The idea is to get this done sooner so that you're not faced with the possibility of torrential snowstorms or disgustingly cold temperatures or anything like that, which I know will definitely disappoint and upset a lot of people that absolutely love the concept, the idea of an open air stadium and it's just snowing like crazy. Because again, we think back to that Grey Cup in Ottawa, I think it was 2017, when the snow came down and just kept coming and coming and coming.
Shania.
Yep. I mean, for a lot of people, that was peak Canadian football. That was like just peak Canadiana, even. All of that. But maybe it doesn't make for the best look on TV. And I wonder if that's one of the reasons why. And also, too, with these playoff games, you want to go and support your team, but at the same time, you don't want to freeze your butt off in like minus 30 weather, which I get it. As do I. Like, if you had the choice between that and staying at home, watching on your big screen TV, drinking your own alcohol, your own snacks, all that stuff, like, I get it. I truly get it. But it's going to be different.
And including that, too, the thing that we didn't bring up, was that also now with the potential extra playoff game, season ticket holders are going to be on the hook for that second game. So you won't be paying for 11 games. You'll be paying for 12.
Mm. Also true. I mean, that's going to make things well. Again, and also too with seating arrangements having to change as a result of the field dimensions.
Yeah.
This is another variable that has to be calculated as well. So it'll be interesting. I guess that's the best way to put it. Is this we are in interesting times right now?
Yes, and something like this is funny. Something like this, where almost every team makes the playoffs. It hasn't happened since I think the Arena Football League did it in 19. I think it was 2019.
Yeah, I was going to say, how can you be opposed to it when you watch the Arena Football League have all 4 of their teams in the playoffs? I mean,
well, they had aggregate scoring. That's what I loved. They had aggregate.
It's still the idea, though, that every team makes the playoffs. It's that, people are up in arms about that, or nearly every team makes the playoffs. That sort of narrative is the one that's very hard to shake right now. And it seems like it's funny to see like the divide amongst fans, media members, TSN people, production people, football people, league wide, nationwide, hell, even worldwide. I mean, people from the States and that love the CFL, they're chiming in with their thoughts on it. Some are very much with it, and some are very much, don't mess with what makes the CFL great, makes it different. Because, again, this is coming back to the whole turning this into NFL light or Americanizing the game. Maybe that's why the Alouettes are drafting all these tight ends all of a sudden. Maybe it truly is making the game more American, because that is typically an American position. But again, sorry, I'm gonna go get my tinfoil hat right now.
So yes, I'm gonna say it anyways. And people are just to give an example, the Arena Football League had 8 teams. Every single team made the playoffs in 2016. In 2017, they said, "Oh well, you know what? It's only 4 or 5." In 2018, it was all 4 teams again, and I think that was the year they had the aggregate scoring, et cetera, et cetera. We know it has happened in hockey in the early NHL days, but it wasn't at this percentage, and it's happened elsewhere. So, but still.
And as we know, CFL fans are just so open to change and embrace change so readily, right?
Oh yeah, and one thing we can say too before we finish this the show is, yes, it's an extra game. It also potentially opens the opportunity for another broadcast partner to come in and maybe do the play-in games. Who knows? We'll have to see. Maybe TVA does the French side, and then maybe, I don't know. I'm not going to say Rogers, considering the news that just broke with Rogers this week. But anyways, somebody else.
Not CBC. To mention, yeah,
does the other one.
Or they go the streaming route. They go putting games on Amazon Prime or Netflix or one of those providers. I mean, that is certainly
cool, actually. That'd be cool. CFL on Netflix. That would be cool, actually. They would cheap out anyways, Cliff. They would use the damn graphics from TSN, which, anyways.
Well, CBS Sports Network does that. They essentially just slap on their logo.
It's a simulcast, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, the precedent's already been set as far as I'm concerned in that regard. So, I mean, but again, that is certainly a route that they could take, and maybe that too could spark some interest. Like you talk about some people don't subscribe to TSN, or they don't get CSN Plus or CFL Plus or anything like that. But just about everybody has Netflix. Quite a few people have Amazon Prime. I mean, if you want to watch certain shows, sometimes you have no choice but to get these streaming services.
It really makes me wonder if if this was on Amazon, is what happened this week kind of like one of those Mr. Beast things where Mr. Beast can all the wacky stuff comes out when Mr. Beast comes out and brings out his briefcases. I think he just opened up his briefcase and we just all got surprised. So
kind of feels that way, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. I'm waiting for him now to come up and flip a coin, and it will be, who knows. But anyways, what do you guys think?
Let us know in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, let us know in the comments what you think about this, or hit us up on social media, because I mean, as I said, there's I won't say a great divide when it comes to opinion on this, but very few people are sort of like, whatever on it. Very few, and a lot of people though are saying, well, let's wait and see, and I get that. I'm sort of in that boat too. Like, I don't feel these changes were absolutely necessary. I get why they are being made, and I'm kind of in the boat of let's wait and see. But at the same time, I still question it, and of course, I definitely am 1,000% opposed to the idea of dropping news like this, literally on CFL Canadian Draft Day. I mean that.
I know. I
mean, of all the boo-boos that could have happened this past Tuesday, between that and the draft tracker, I mean, it's just.
Yeah.
And were we not at Grey Cup promised a new CFL website and almost the promise of that'll never happen again when it came to the draft tracker pooping the bed in 2025? We were promised by
Beast with his coin. Heads it will, tails it won't.
Oh, Lord have mercy. I mean,
I know, but
it's still that idea that you're doing stuff like this, and it's the optics, it's the timing. I mean, if you wanted to do this, I get it. It's just the timing. It just is baffling more than anything else. I mean,
yep. I agree.
I think it's kind of funny. I kind of joked, like, had you, with so many curling fans out there, had the CFL framed it like we're taking a page of the curling handbook, which, believe me, the vast majority of Western Canada would be all over it like a fat kid on a Smartie, I think. Or
and
at least
Atlantic
it would make
Atlantic Canada too.
Yeah, but as it were, they just dropped the announcement, and I think it's a lot of it is the presentation of said news as well. And then when there's vitriol afterwards, I feel like Stuart Johnson is kind of saying fans will get over it, or just kind of brushing it off as a nothing burger.
I can't believe that was said.
You know what? I can't believe it either, but it was, and it really comes back to there's a certain finesse that needs to be had when it comes to delivering news like this. And that's something that this league really truly needs to figure out. I mean, between that and the marketing, which we've talked about for years on end, about how this league the marketing of this league, or the lack thereof.
Right.
But yeah.
So, yeah, I know. By the way, to end this on a nice positive historical note, the Alouettes just turned 80, just within the last week. The 80th anniversary of the league the team has announced that they're going to be doing stuff. So are we. Stay tuned. We got some ideas. We're going to celebrate the team's 80th anniversary. Also, talking about camp, and I mentioned it before, but just this past weekend, it was a celebration of the 65th anniversary when the Alouettes announced that they were going to hold camp in 1961 in Winooski, Vermont, becoming at the time the very first Canadian team to hold an entire camp in the U.S.
I just had a thought. Imagine if, due to the inclement weather that's incoming, could we see certain teams go down to the States and have their training camp there? Like, for example, Winnipeg. We joke about Winterpeg all the time. Could you imagine them going to like Bismarck, North Dakota, to have.
Oh,
their
they're going to
training camp.
Duluth. They're going to go to Duluth, Minnesota.
Okay, that works too. Saskatchewan. I mean, if it's too snowy in Saskatoon, do they head down to, was it Montana? That's I think it's Montana that borders this. I don't remember.
Hell, they could just go down to Regina, if you think about it.
But if you're trying to get, my idea is if you're trying to get away from the snow and the cold and all that nonsense, or they just, maybe do like spring training in baseball and just everybody goes to Florida or Arizona.
Arizona, exactly.
I know Davis Alexander would be thrilled if the Alouettes had their training camp in Arizona, because that's where he lives.
Yep.
He'd be happier than a pig in poop.
Yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show this week. We want to thank JC Abbott for joining us again. Such a knowledgeable dude. And go check out all of his stuff over at 3downnation.com.
Yes.
And we'll be back next week. It'll be our camp preview.
Oh yeah.
Which we always have fun doing. And so stay tuned to all of our socials for any information that may happen to come across the wire. But other than that, we will see you all next week for the next show. So for the
make sure that you are subscribed or following, however it is that you consume the Alouettes Flight Deck. Make sure that you are on board with us, because as Tim said, it's getting big. It's getting real now. We're truly in the home stretch as far as the offseason ending, and we're excited. We're definitely excited about what's coming up for the Alouettes Flight Deck, and we want you all to be a part of it. So hit that notification bell on YouTube. Make sure you're following, subscribed. However it is, we want you on board with us. We want you to be part of the flight crew.
Exactly. So for everybody here at the Alouettes Flight Deck, for Cliffy D, I'm Tim Capper. We're on Final Approach.